Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome to another episode of A Game of Throws in World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. What's that, another episode of A Game of Throws? Well, as long as derps exist, I am never going to run out of material for this series. Welcome to what I believe is a tier, well I know it's tier 8, tier 8 ranked battle, domination mode. This is why there are only 7 players per side and they're all tier 8, and it shouldn't come as any great surprise to see that almost all of the battleships in this particular battle are heavily spec'd into secondaries. Tier 8, well, with some obvious exceptions, most notably HMS Agincourt down at tier 5, but it's generally tier 8 where you start to get the secondary powerhouses, ships like the Massachusetts, present in this battle, ships like the Bismarck, also present in this battle, and ships like the Tirpitz here, the lonely Queen of the North, being sailed for us today by Tiggerib. So, the Tirpitz, sister ship of the Bismarck, obviously, although the Bismarck had a slightly more exciting war than the Tirpitz, quite famously being sunk by the Royal Navy on its first sortie into the North Atlantic. The Tirpitz, by contrast, only ever fired its guns in anger once, and blew up a Norwegian weather station on some island somewhere. However, it definitely had a much bigger, despite its lack of action, it basically spent the entire war as a bomb aiming target for the Royal Air Force, tucked away in a Norwegian fjord, but just the fact that the Tirpitz existed meant that all Arctic convoys had to be escorted by a battle group that included battleships and aircraft carriers. I don't mean they actually escorted the convoys. You don't include things like fleet carriers and battleships in an actual convoy, because then they're tied to the slowest speed of the slowest ship in the convoy, which is usually something like 9 knots, and it makes them far too vulnerable to submarine and air attack. The actual convoy escorts, the ones physically escorting the convoy, would have been the corvettes, the frigates, the destroyers, and sometimes the light cruisers. But the mere fact that the Tirpitz existed and could venture out from its hidden Norwegian fjord to threaten one of these convoys directly. So even though the Tirpitz pretty much spent World War II getting bombed by the Royal Air Force until they eventually got her, took them long enough though, undeniably had a much, much bigger influence than her sister ship, the Bismarck, that grabbed all of the headlines. Here in game, the Tirpitz is a very, very good ship. It's the sister ship of the Bismarck, so there aren't that many differences between the two of them. The chief difference being that the Tirpitz has torpedoes, and the Bismarck gets hydro, the Tirpitz does not. Both ships are extremely tough, with that turtleback armour arrangement protecting their citadel. This does not mean that the Bismarck or the Tirpitz are immune to being citadeled. They can both still take huge amounts of armour-piercing chunk damage if they're dumb enough to show you a big fat juicy broadside to shoot at. Just don't expect to score any citadels unless you're really close and really lucky. The guns aren't bad. Both ships are armed with 8 15-inch guns. The accuracy is reasonable, I mean it's good enough. But it's the secondaries that are the real standouts on both of these ships. The secondaries are quite simply fantastic. And it's no real surprise to see most Tirpitz and Bismarck captains running a full secondary build, and Tigger is no different. Actually, speaking of the accuracy of these guns, when the German battleships were first introduced, a fair number of people got quite triggered that the guns didn't behave like railguns with laser-like accuracy. And this, of course, is all down to the, well, I don't want to call it the myth about German naval gunnery, because German gunners were good. They were certainly better than Royal Navy gunners, for reasons which I'll go into in a moment, but they weren't as good as they were made out to be, and it's mostly down to things like, for example, the opening salvo from the Bismarck at HMS Hood that quite famously blew the Hood out of the water. The thing about German naval gunnery, while it was good, it tended to be very good at the start of a battle, but got worse and worse as the battle went on. And that was down to German radar. You see, Germany had radar. Oh, hang on a second. Battle chat. GG, you win. It's 5 versus 7, basically. Please kill our destroyer. Somebody's complaining about the Benson on the enemy team. More on that later. Right now, back to German gunnery. Both the Tirpitz and the Bismarck had radar-directed main battery 15-inch guns. The thing is, though, the German radar, while Germany had radar, it wasn't as advanced as Allied radar. And when you unleash a salvo of 8 15-inch guns, it tends to shake the ship around a bit. And the German radar was kind of fragile, and it would tend to malfunction as the battle went on. So German gunnery tended to be very, very good at the start of a battle, but got worse the longer the battle lasted. By contrast, British gunnery wasn't good. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it was definitely not world class. And the reason for this is primarily because of ambitious executive officers who wanted to be captains one day, and 300 years of effectively unchallenged British naval supremacy. You see, the executive officer of a warship is responsible for a couple of things. He's responsible for discipline, he's responsible for seamanship, he's the de facto day-to-day manager of life on board the ship, and he's also responsible for the ship's presentation, making sure that everything is well painted, rust-free, and so on and so on, making sure the ship looks good. Now the thing is, if you're an ambitious executive officer and you want to be captain of your own warship one day, and you're in a navy that's basically rested on its reputation for the best part of the last 300 years, there aren't a lot of opportunities for you to distinguish yourself in battle. So the next best way to get yourself a good report is to ensure that the ship looks immaculate. Because that's basically what the Royal Navy mostly did for 300 years. Sail around the world, given a show of force with these big, impressive, beautiful warships. So a lot of these executive officers who were independently wealthy, they weren't relying on their Navy pay for a living, out of their own pocket would often pay for paint to ensure that the ship looked as good as it possibly could. And one way of messing up that paintwork was to do gunnery training. I'm not making this up, right? It sounds ridiculous, but it's the way things were. So let's just say throughout most of the 19th century leading up to the two world wars, the standard of gunnery training in the Royal Navy wasn't as good as it probably should have been. But in order to compensate for this, the Royal Navy, rather than properly training the gunners, just said, well, if we can't hit the target most of the time, let's just put more lead down range. So the emphasis was on firing the guns as rapidly as they possibly could, and that meant leaving all of the ammunition doors open so that you could get those powder charges to the ammo hoists as quickly as possible. Oh look, there's the Benson that somebody was complaining about earlier, and he's just smoked up and saved the Bismarck, who then ruins it by firing his guns. Bismarck was safe. He was undetected. The Benson had come to the aid of a teammate. He could have used that smoke screen to disengage, give himself some time to put the fire out, use his damage repair party, but nope, he just had to fire the guns. Smoke firing penalty kicked in, once again spotted, and there's Tigger's first kill. But yeah, this hilariously unsafe practice of leaving all the ammunition doors and screens open in order to resupply the guns with powder charges as quickly as possible to boost the rate of fire to compensate for the pretty bad actual gunnery training is why the hood exploded when it was hit by the Bismarck, and also why British battlecruisers blew up so dramatically at the Battle of Jutland in the First World War. It wasn't because German gunners were just so good at hitting magazines, it was because if they hit anything remotely near the magazine, the blast would reach the magazine because all of the ammunition doors were open. Anyway, the enemy Benson, who was apparently so bad that he should be on Tigger's team. Oh, look at that. Didn't I just do a video about obvious torpedoes being obvious? Tigger just got slapped. And of course, now he's inside the smoke screen, he can't see the Benson. But the Benson can still see him. Fortunately, there aren't any more torpedoes on the way, at least not yet. I don't know what the Benson's torpedo reload is, but, well, he's probably safe for a minute. But the Benson can now quite safely sit outside that smoke screen and attempt to get another fire going. There's absolutely nothing Tigger can do about it. He needs to clear this smoke screen. Then again, actually, slipping into this smoke, I can see the method in his madness here because he is flipping this cap. At the moment, his team have no cap circles and the enemy team have a 1 kill advantage. If he can just just a couple of seconds. Just avoid getting reset. There it is. He's taken one of the cap circles. The enemy team are, of course, 300 points ahead. And the Benson's gone undetected. You can still see him, obviously. And there will be more torpedoes coming. But right now, there is basically nothing that Tigger can do about that Benson. He needs to come to the assistance of the friendly North Carolina over there, who's currently fighting against, I think it's an Alabama and a Baltimore. Yep, there's the Baltimore. Right now, that North Carolina's got a lot of health left. The next time we see him, he won't. Tigger, seeing the bitch slapping that the North Carolina just delivered to the Baltimore, focuses his fire on the Alabama instead. The North Carolina takes the Baltimore out. Unfortunately, because getting those shots into the Baltimore involved the North Carolina coming out around the side of an island broadside on in front of the Alabama just seriously leveled the odds by slapping the North Carolina for about 35,000 health. Tigger's doing what he can, but he's only got the 2 front turrets firing, and it is only 4 guns. Although the Alabama is now within range of the secondaries and is probably not going to survive this. As Tigger checks around behind him to make sure there's no Bensons sneaking up on him. But he's definitely going to get the Alabama. It's just a question of whether or not the Alabama can take the North Carolina out before that happens. And he did. Ah well. For a couple of seconds it's 1 versus 2, but the Alabama's history. And there he goes. That just leaves the Benson. Tigger is now the last ship left alive on his team, and he's in a battleship. And the last ship left alive on the enemy team is a destroyer. A destroyer that's faster than him, way more stealthy than him, has 2 of the cap circles, and is 300 points ahead. There's no way a big, stupid, dumb battleship like the Tirpitz is ever going to outspot and outdetect a Benson. Trying to chase after a destroyer is suicide because it will just get you torpedoed. Trying to flip the caps is going to fail hilariously because the Benson can see where you're going, stay out of spot and range, and then once you're safely away, just flip the cap circle behind you. Literally all the Benson has to do right now is nothing, and it's still probably going to win. Hang on a minute. What are those secondaries shooting at? Oh wait, no. Maybe he was just trying to set a fire while Tigger was engaged with the Alabama. He's going to pop smoke or just stop shooting and go undetected again. Any second now. I mean, what kind of idiot in a destroyer stays purposefully detected within shooting range of the secondaries of a Tirpitz? So any second now, he's going to pop smoke or just stop shooting, turn around and run away and take the win. And he's not doing it, is he? I think I may have given this Benson too much credit for his actions in trying to save the Bismarck earlier and landing those successful torpedo hits on Tigger. Or possibly he knows exactly what he's doing and he's just pissed off at the teammate who was slagging him off earlier and he's deliberately throwing the match. Honestly, I don't know. I'd pay a large sum of money to see what the enemy team chat looks like right now. Because that was a throw of epic proportions. Whether it was deliberate or not, I don't know. But a throw's a throw. I'm sure Tigger is perfectly happy to take it and is very grateful to the enemy Benson for turning that 6v6 ranked battle into what was effectively, as predicted by whoever it was on the enemy team within the first 5 minutes of the match, from a 6v6 into a 5 versus 7. Wow. Well, it's the sort of thing you watch these videos for, I suppose. They're not called a Game of Throws for nothing. Congratulations, Tigger. Yeah, we'll call that a well-earned victory. It's just most of the work was put in by the enemy destroyer. And I hope you all enjoyed it, because that's it for today. As always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.